Starting where I left off in part 1, I'm going to keep attaching these pieces together, bending and tying them together however possible. I don't have much of a plan for the sides or the back, but I have the general idea of keeping the piece flowing well. Grabbing the wire and really pulling it through. I use a lot of force on my pieces. I don't really even know where all of my stones will be sitting at this point. I just know I want to have the opal in this section here. I'm going to keep squeezing this and wrapping together, tightening it. Pull this wire down, straighten it out a little bit. We'll bring it here to the bottom and tie this around this other thicker wire. As all the decorative aspects of this piece come together, you can see how rigid the framing of it all really starts to get. Flattening that wire out a little bit with my flat pliers. So now we'll see how this other filigree flow fits in here. Bend it around a little bit, just trying to squeeze it. It'll take quite a bit of adjusting. So here at the bottom, we'll kind of smash it together. And we'll be able to come back through and polish this more. Trying out the opal, we'll see how that starts to fit. For some of the super thick wire, I like to use older pliers so I don't mess up any of my newer ones. So now that we got that cut, we'll pull it up in here and bend it over these other wires. Still, there'll be a lot of wires running through this piece, so all of this is still going to get attached pretty well. So that swirl kind of fell down in there. So I'll come from the underside and push that back up. So this wire coming to the back side now, I'm going to just kind of anticipate maybe some sort of flow on the back Or maybe this will just be a piece that gets tied to and it'll be internal work. Not really sure, but I'm going to try to direct this wire to go where there already is no wire. And maybe it'll be a good tie off. Oh look, it reaches that point. Time to tie it off. So now that I've gotten my pieces put together for the most part, I'm going to do a little bit more sanding. There's a few more marks that I've put on this since last time I sanded. So we'll get all those marks. We'll actually fast forward through a lot of this. Lots of sanding. So here I have 22 gauge round wire. This is half hard. Doesn't have to be, that's what I prefer. I'm going to take the 28 gauge and make a weave. It'll be a side weave that helps hold the opal in place. And so here I think I'm doing 4 loops around one side and 5 loops around the other. I want this weave to slightly curve. You'll see how this will come together at the end. And now repeat. We're going to fast forward through this. Side to side. So now we're coming up on the end. I just did a couple loops around that side, just getting to a closer tie-off point. This will still also be more structural, so it doesn't need to be absolutely perfect. Chop off that little end piece. And I'm just going to use my fingers and try to work this together as much as possible. For now, and once I have it on the piece, I can tighten it up a bit more, but it may not need it. Once again, this is just support to help hold the opal in place. It's not the complete support. So now that we've got our slight curve to it, I'm going to use my flathead pliers and kind of push the middle of them outward to create more of a spot for the opal to fit. Now that it's ready to go into the piece, we'll chop the end where it's held together, and now we have our two separate wires. So that's how the opal will fit in there. And now to sand out a few more scratches before we set the fragile opal. It'll be much harder to use abrasives once the opal is in there. And so fast forward through some of that sanding. And so we'll put this in place. Oops, dropped the opal. And so there's how it'll hold together. Now just where to tie this off so it'll hold. We'll tuck it through there and pull that through. Not too tight because the other side is not tied off yet. You don't want to pull the wire out of the weave you just did. So tie off this side slightly, at least give it a bend, so you can now start to work on the other side and pull tighter. You don't want to push too much on an opal like this, but I'm being quite gentle, just more so nudging it against it. And so we'll get this other one and get that secured. Alright, so now that the two loose ends on the bottom are tied in, not completely tied in, we're still going to tie those to a few more things. Now we can really use more force on the top ones to pull it in and really pull that opal into place. So now trying to decide where that goes, and that actually is not quite the right spot. Let's pull it through. Readjust the opal. And pull that wire around there. And now we can secure that wire. This opal can still slide back and forth, it can still fall back into the crack a little bit more. But now that it's mostly in place, I'll run other wires around it and it'll become increasingly more secure as the piece goes on. And we'll tie this other one, pinch that around, make sure that that wire is as tight as it can be for now. You don't want a loose loop that'll eventually start to lose its tension. And so with these two, now that they're wrapped around the bigger wires, I'm actually just going to twist these two together. This is a technique I use quite often. I feel like it's more secure than just looping around a bigger wire a few times and then chopping it off like I see a lot of wire wrappers doing. But tying it around a bigger wire and then twisting the two smaller wires together, or 3 or 4, however many little wires, and then tucking them into the piece. And not to forget, I'm going to make other videos more focused on some of the little things I do in these pieces. So those types of tie-offs will be one of them. I kind of moved quickly through a lot of the steps in this video, but as I said before, this is more of an overview. So pulling that through, now that we've mostly got the outside framing of this piece, I'm going to do a balance test and make sure that this piece is hanging how I want it to. And so just nudging it, checking the balance again, bending some of this thicker wire. It's definitely leaving marks in the side, but I'm going to polish that out and sand it. I'm going to use this diamond bit and I'm going to grind out the area where the chain will be sliding through, so it'll be less wear on your chain. So with 14 gauge, half round, dead soft wire, I'm going to use this piece to run over the top of the opal, pushing it more against that weave. And still there will be more wires coming over this that'll really help hold it. Little by little, it all starts to come together into one very solid piece. So we'll tie off this other 22 gauge from the weave a few more times around the bigger wire. And so pulling the 14 gauge wire through the bottom there, I'm going to have it come around this side and help fill the space that the opal could fall into. So there's a bigger loop in there, pushing that opal towards the weave that we did before. Sometimes I'll fill spaces as much as I can with the wire. So now I'm going to tie off all these loose ends and start to get another fill for the balance of it. So bending and tying this 14 gauge half round wire, just tying it off around one of those thicker wires in there. And then this other end of the 14 gauge, it's gone around the thicker wire a few times, but I add that little hook in there to make sure that it stays. So now we're going to bring this piece over to the flex shaft with the grinding wheel in there. And we'll grind out the bell a little bit. And I kind of jumped forward in the video. I did it for a little bit longer. Really grinding it out, trying to make sure that it's smooth. And while I'm at it, I'm going to use this tool to smooth out some of the deeper marks. But also I'm going to be using sandpaper. So try that balance out again. So it's almost hanging how I want it to. So I'm going to use the flex shaft a little bit longer and smooth this bail out until it hangs how I want it to. There's my friend's cat, Moo Moo, there in the background they had stickers made of. So there we go, that's how I want it to hang. That's great, so that's the start of the piece and the extent of the videos that I took of it. So I'm going to continue to fill out the piece, all the little tedious work. I took photos along the way. I hope they're helpful. Feel free to pause the video at any point to get a better look at some of this, and let me know if you have any questions. As you can see, I still put some marks on the wire as I continue to work on it and just polish those out. If you see up at the top, the bail area, the loop stays open and I can tie wires around the top part. The back becomes quite a mess. And now I start to add some of the gold. I cover a lot of my stones with stickers during the polishing process and fill out the back. Here's the finished piece in all of its glory. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate the support.